Hi everyone, this is a game between Channel Isolani, who are a team from the Channel Islands, and 3Cs2, and it is a board 2, a candidate master called Peter Kirby playing for them with a 2031 ELO, although it must have been over 2200 since it said C next to his name for candidate master, unless it meant captain, but they had another one with C next to the name, so therefore candidate master versus Nathan Gittens, who was 150 ECF at the time, so that converts to 1850. And this has a funny story because it was the first weekend, and we was at the it was the Sunday game, and we was at the breakfast table, me and Nathan, and we'd played white the previous game on Saturday, and we knew they were strong, and that Nathan might get a title player, and we was absolutely proper scared. We were of being smashed with black pieces in like 20 moves, or even worse, ground down in a 60 move endgame that lasted like 6 hours. And it was like, oh, I couldn't believe we couldn't like eat anything or anything. And we was making all sorts of stuff like E4, C5, double question mark, at least to getting smashed off some FM who knows all the theory and all that. And we was just hoping, we was like praying just to survive the opening. My game which I did play was against Julie Denning, which I did a video on quite a long time ago. And so if you search it you will get it. And this is Nathan's game. His opponent was white and played a sideline of the Sicilian, which was played in the Kasparov versus the World match in 1999. Because Kasparov didn't want to show all his theory he'd prepared for his upcoming match against Kramnik in the World Championship. And it is a playable sideline, but shouldn't lead white to give white much of an advantage. All three blocks are possible. Obviously queen d7 isn't possible. Bishop d7, bishop takes d7 check, queen takes d7, and c4, which is a Maroczy bind now, where white is clamping down on d5 with these two pawns to prevent this liberating thrust that usually gives black equality if it can play it successfully. And it also blocks any potential c5 counterplay once white plays d4. Knight c6, castles, and g6, a good move because in Maroczy bind positions black should finish out the bishop on g7, and then there is more pressure on d4 because when pawns are on e4 and c4, d4 becomes an outpost because a white pawn can't challenge it. If white plays c3, then black should play e6 and answer d4 with takes and d5, which will be like a French but with the bad light square bishop swapped off. d4, c takes, knight takes, bishop g7. Also possible is knight f6, knight c3, knight takes, queen takes, bishop g7 with some good pressure down the diagonal. Bishop e3, knight f6. And now knight g4 might be a threat, so f3, which also tightens the bind because e4 is overprotected. Castles. Oops. Castles, knight c3, rook fc8, b3, e6, and rook c1. And now here comes the first new move of the game, a little novelty you could say, but it's not a very good one because b6, which was played, weakens the light squares. d5 is possible in this position, with good play for black. b6, queen d2, knight e7, rook c2, d5. This isn't as good now because white can play c takes d5, e takes d5, and now e5, a strong central thrust. And after black's knight moves, now comes f4. White is better here because the isolated pawn on d5 is under pressure. It is on a semi-open file and is blockaded well by a knight at d4. And white also has a big space advantage with pawns on f4 and e5, which combine to lock black's dark square bishop out of the game. And also, usually when you have an isolated pawn, you have a space advantage for compensation, but white's got all the space here. Knight c7, preferring to recycle the knight and challenge the blockader. Rook fc1, doubling up on the c line. f6, Shouldn't be opening the game up here, but it's interesting. Takes, bishop takes, queen d3, rook d8. Knight ce2, bolstering the guard of d4 to keep the pawn blockaded. Knight e6, knight takes, queen takes. Now the other knight comes into d4 with tempo, attacking the queen. And now queen e4, which maybe isn't the best move because black should be trying to keep the queens on with it having an isolated pawn, but white may have too much pressure otherwise. Bishop takes d4 is interesting, giving up the bishop to at least try and get rid of the blockader. The bishop takes d4, rook c8, fighting back on the c line. And white's better, but black isn't dead. But after queen e4, queen takes, pawn takes, we start to see what we feared at the breakfast table, where black is slightly worse, but white has a nagging edge because of black's pawn weakness, and white's also a title play, so black's going to get ground down here in 6 hours. Knight c6, rook d3, activating the rook, but now comes knight takes, bishop takes, check, takes, king f7 and king f2, and white's got a good advantage in the same game. White's rook is more active, it can attack pawns more easily, and black's e4 pawn is weak and will probably drop off. Still, there is plenty of drawing chances. Rook and pawn endgames are pawn down and quite drawish, but there is still bishops on to complicate the issue. But now comes rook d7, which is just blunders the pawn, because after rook c4, the pawn cannot be defended. King e6, activating the king, and b5 are better tries. Rook d7, rook c4, b5 takes, rook c7, bishop d4. And now he plays bishop c5, which is a good idea because it pins the bishop to the king, and then black can try and draw the rook ending the pawn down. So it's a nice idea. Also possible is bishop f6, king e3, and now rook c2 fighting back with an active rook, because in rook endgames the active rook is key. So bishop c5, king e3, because white would rather play king e3 and make black take, because but white gets a couple of tempos through centralising the king. Takes, rook takes, king e6, king d2. And now white has a 3 against 2 in majority, and black here should try and trade some pawns off, because the more pawns come off, the more chances it's going to be a draw, because a lot of rook and pawn against rook endgames are drawn. So a6, g4, and now h5 is best, trying to get these pawns off. Rook f7, king e3, rook c7, king d2, rook f7, a4, king b, rook b7, and now the first session of torture is complete. Now we've reached the time control. And also a funny instant in this game is that I can't remember exactly, but his opponent was like being really picky and getting annoyed for not putting the piece exactly on the square, even though Nathan was in bad time pressure. It was pretty funny anyway. King c3, rook c7 check, king d2, rook b7, a5, rook c7, and now rook d8. And now white should be decisively better now, because a6 and h7 pawns are potential targets, especially a6. Rook f7, attacking f4, king e3 though defending, rook c7, rook a8. King e4 looks better. And now rook c6, which effectively loses the game, although white is still winning after king d5. But at least the centralised king creates some problems. After f5, g takes, king e5, takes, check, takes, f6, check, takes, rook b6. But now, although black's won the pawn back, the f6 pawn is protected, and now once the b5 pawn goes, white's f and a pawns are much quicker than the h pawn, so white is winning. But that forces white to think at least. Whereas after rook c6, king e4, king d6. And after these moves, black is just completely passive. And after king d5, now the rook is forced off the pawn. Well, he plays rook c3, it takes. And now he resigns because the a pawn's gonna queen. White's king is infiltrating, and white also has 3 against 2 on the king's side. And well, at least he didn't get smashed anyway, so there was no need to be almost physically sick at the breakfast table. But I suppose we did fear getting ground down after 5 hours of play, and we only just lost the match as well. But anyway, there's things to be learned from this game. How to play against the Maroczy bind and all that, and some rook endgame stuff. And I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave any comments and thoughts. Thanks very much.